So this is going to be an in-depth article of the week review for you. And so a lot of people have expressed having difficulty with these, and I'm not quite sure why. So we're going to start from scratch, and I'm just going to reteach the entire thing. Okay. So a couple of things that I've noticed that have kind of become habits in people's doing of these is that some of you are you're not really reading the article. You're just defining 5 random words that you choose out, and you Google the definitions, and then you write an essay that makes it clear to me that you did not read the article. Okay. So, go back through your grades and look and see what the things are that I'm marking you off for. Some of you aren't just plain aren't doing annotations. Some of you are only writing 1 or 2 sentences for your essay. So again, I just want to remind everybody that this assignment's 10 points every week, and it can either really help your grade, so much so that you can bomb an exam and still be fine, or it can really hurt your grade, so much so that you can ace an exam and not be fine, right? So this assignment is one of the foundational things that we do as part of the course. So I would recommend that if you're going to do one thing really, really well in this course, it will be this. Okay. So I am going to also put a quiz up that is going to ask you to some questions about the information in this video. So it's important that you pay attention. All right. But that being said, this is going to be a longer video, longer than I normally like to do. So feel free to skip around, pause, rewind, fast forward to look for the information that you're looking for. So I'm going to do this whole thing with you and model what I'm looking for and tell you how I'm thinking about the things that I'm writing. Okay. So first step here is I'm going to put my name. Okay. And that's just extra layer of protection for you to make sure that you get counted for the work that you do. All right. So up here you have these 5 annotations. Okay. You have define an unknown word, express an opinion, an agree or disagree statement, identify a main idea, activate prior knowledge, identify appeals to ethos, pathos, and logos. Okay, so I'm going to make it my goal to try to find one of each of these in this article. Let's hope that we're successful. But just to review, if you don't know what ethos, pathos, and logos are, there are lots of good resources and YouTube videos that you can look up. I have attached a couple of those videos to your article of the week assignment, but just a real quick review. Ethos is anytime the author tries to appeal to your sense of their credibility, right? So it answers the question, why should I listen to you, right? So if I quote an expert, then that would be an example of an ethos appeal, right? Because experts know things, and if they say it, then it must be true, right? That's ethos. Pathos is going to be your emotional appeals. So anything that I say that might try to pull on your emotions, right? So if I say something like 20,000 families in West Virginia will go hungry tonight. That's an example of pathos, because you should feel bad about the fact that there are people starving. It's also an example of logos because it's a statistic. Logos appeals fall into 2 categories usually. They're statistics or facts, or they're kind of like appeals to logic. Okay, so if I were to say, if you don't do the article of the week, you will fail this class. That's an example of logos, right? Because I'm not telling you, hey, you got to do the article of the week. I'm letting you come to your own conclusion. Well, if I want to pass the class, and I do, then I better do the article of the week, right? See how that works? So again, logos, statistics, and chains of logic, like the one I just mentioned. Pathos is an appeal to your emotions, so anything that kind of pulls at your heartstrings. Ethos is answering the question, why should I listen to you, right? So anytime they quote an expert or somebody from a university or a prominent celebrity or politician or anything like that, it's ethos. Okay, so let's work our way through these annotations and how to do them and how to find them. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this article to you. And so few people would approach a complete stranger on the street for information about the pressing issues of the day. And yet that is how many behave on the internet. In the wake of the 2016 election, reporting from BuzzFeed and other outlets has made it increasingly clear that the American voter is woefully lacking in the skills needed to judge the veracity of a news website. So we have this word veracity here, okay? And that is a word that's a pretty cool vocab word there. So let's see if we can define that word. So when you want to make an annotation, you highlight something and you click this little plus thing to add a comment. And then this little box pops up and then you can type whatever you want. Okay, so veracity. So whenever I'm doing the definitions, what I'm looking for here is the top definition. It's the most common definition. And you want to put that definition in your comment and hit comment. Okay. So veracity means accuracy. So they cannot judge the accuracy of a news website. Okay. So that's the goal here, is to learn a new word, which I just did. Okay. So, among the many headlines from fake news websites were reports that Pope Francis endorsed President-elect Trump, that Hillary Clinton used a body double throughout the campaign and sold weapons to ISIS. Okay, so I've already defined an unknown word here. So we'll just go ahead and strike that out. Okay, so that one we're done with. So now I know that I have one of my 5 annotations finished. The founders and authors of these fake news promulgators craft their stories for the sole purpose of maximizing visitor hits to, in turn, generate massive revenue. Their deceptions play to readers' worst fears, regardless of whether the writers themselves subscribe to the political leanings of the article's content. It is not intended to pose an alternative truth, writes author Neil Gabler, as if there could be such a thing, but destroy the truth altogether, to set us adrift in a world of belief without facts, a world where there is no defense against lies. Okay, so you might categorize this as a couple different things here. So you could do an appeal to ethos, because they're quoting this famous author here. You could do an appeal to pathos, because they're saying things that are designed to kind of make you a little scared, right? If there's no defense against lies, that would be a pretty scary world to live in. You could also write an agree or disagree statement here and say whether or not you agree or disagree with the thing that the author says. Okay, so I'm going to make this one ethos. Okay, so I'm going to write ethos, and then I'm going to write why I think that's ethos. Okay, they quoted a famous author. Okay, and I'm hitting the comment. In comparison with news outlets and other sites, they offer ideologically based takes on the most pressing issues of the day. Fake news operations occupy a unique place on the web and constitute an obvious and menacing threat to unsuspecting visitors. The inability of so many readers to distinguish between the two and know when to steer clear of a website altogether is undoubtedly concerning. For those of us on the front lines of education, especially for history teachers, this problem is nothing new, given the ways in which the rise of the internet has transformed the teaching of the subject over the past 15 years. Students and teachers now have access to vast amounts of information about the past, but few know how to discern what is reliable and what is not. Okay, so let's go back up top here. So I did my ethos appeal, so I'm gonna get rid of that. And I'm getting ready to do my activating a prior knowledge thing. Okay, so activating prior knowledge is just when you mention something that you already know about the topic. Okay, so I'm going to go back down here to this paragraph, which I just read, and I know something about this because I am a teacher. And he mentions, the author mentions history teachers specifically, but I want to mention, what I know. Okay, I'm going to put activate prior knowledge. The internet has really changed the way here, the way I teach English. Notice that my I is capitalized. Okay, and then I'm going to make my annotation, right? So nothing fancy here. And you can write more than this if you want to. If you find something you get really excited about. So I have I have 1, 2, 3. I want to do a pathos and a logos too. So I'm going to do a little bit more than you guys would do. But now I need to look for a main idea and an opinion and pathos and logos. Okay. The problem surfaced for me in 2001 when a student handed in a research paper on the early history of the Ku Klux Klan that minimized the level of racial violence during the Reconstruction and characterized the Klan's relationship with Black Southerners as overall positive. The sources were drawn almost entirely from websites published by individual Klan chapters. The student had not thought about the obvious bias of the website or whether it constituted a legitimate historical source. The experience served as an important learning experience for the students, but even more so for me. All right, so I want to highlight something in here, okay? And I just want to write what I think the main idea is of this paragraph. Or maybe I want to write why I think the author included this paragraph too, okay? So main idea is that this is an example of a time when students did not know how to judge whether or not a source was trustworthy. Okay, and your all's example might not be so fancy as mine, but that's what the author is up to here. Okay, so he's given us example of the point that he just got done making, which helps your argument. Okay, even as late as 2001. Oh, we got to go back up here and mark off main idea. Almost forgot. Did I do it right? Nope, I didn't do it right. Okay, try again. Okay. So now I got an opinion, pathos, and logos, if I can find one. Even as late as 2001, my students still relied primarily on printed materials compared to internet sources. Librarians maintain control over new additions to the stacks, allowing for a certain level of quality control, but with each passing year, the availability of faster personal computers, handheld devices, and increased access to the web provided students with easier access to information about an ever-expanding number of historical subjects. Students and teachers benefited immensely from this increased access. Teachers could now introduce their students to a deep well of primary sources and historical figures that never made it into textbooks. Opportunities for students to conduct their own research through primary and secondary sources were soon limitless, defined only by the time they were willing to spend researching. On the other hand, the technology quickly outpaced educators' ability to police or even guide students as to how best to search and assess online information. Okay, so I'm going to do my opinion here, my agree or disagree statement down here. So I'm going to write, I agree with this. I remember when my students first started to use unreliable information. And you got to mention why you agree or disagree. A couple of you guys are just writing agree, and that's it. Okay. I didn't know how to help them. Now, the last thing we're going to do here is we're going to look for an example of pathos an example of logos? Okay, so let's see if we can find one here. An unsubstantiated narrative perpetuated by the media that children are digital natives, naturally hardwired to understand how to use computers, helped to exacerbate the problem even further. Students were left to figure it out on their own, as schools gradually cut back on the purchase of additional printed sources or purged their collections entirely. Where once librarians taught schools how to research, few schools appreciated the important role they could play in educating students how to search and assess information on the web. A recent study of internet literacy among students by the Harvard-Stanford History Education Group shows that they are incapable of distinguishing advertisements from news articles or identifying where information comes from. So this is another example of an ethos appeal, right? Because they are quoting the study from the Stanford History Education Group. Okay, but it's also an example of pathos, because this information is shocking that most students can't tell an advertisement from a news article. So I'm going to write pathos. It is shocking that so many students can't tell what is real or true when online. Okay. And now we need the last one. So let's, just in the interest of time, I'm going to skim through the rest of this real quick and see if I can't find an appeal to logos. So I'm going to pause here until I find one, and then I'll come back. Okay. So this is an example of logos here, even though it's a little bit of a weak example. So typically you're going to be looking for statistics, and that's going to be your most easy version of logos. But we have some questions here that he's asking. So is the site associated with a reputable institution like a museum, historical society, or university? Can you identify the individual organization responsible for the site, and are the proper credentials displayed? So this is logos. And this is an example of like a logical chain, right? So if these things are true, then the website must be reliable. So think about logos kind of like if-then statements. So logos, if these questions are answered yes, then the website must be reliable. Okay. And so I'm going to go up here now, and I have all of my annotations finished. So I can just go ahead and black all of this out. Okay. All right, you guys. So that is the end of part 1 about how to do annotations. If you need help with the essay, check back for part 2, and it'll be posted to Schoology. Okay.